I'm Bonnie Marmer, and I'm here with Amy Lykover. I'm with the Point San Pedro Road Coalition, and Amy is with the Federation of San Rafael Neighborhoods. I am the co-president of the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. Here this evening, we are delighted to welcome you for our co-sponsored Candidates Forum for Assembly District 12. This event is being recorded. And I am delighted also that my co-president, Denise Lucy, will be with us this evening. She's here and will be acting as our timekeeper. We want to start out making everybody feel very welcome by making sure that we know who you are and where you're from. So we're asking that as you come in and join our meeting, that you rename yourself so that we know where you're from, what neighborhood you're from. And in order to do that, all you need to do is in your Zoom window's right corner, hover your cursor over the three little dots and click on rename, and then type your name and neighborhood in the window. Then click on return to enter that information, and then we'll all know who, not only who you are, but where you're from. So we would appreciate it if you can do that. And we are seeing a few neighborhoods listed, but give you a minute to add your neighborhood if you will. And before we get going here on our candidates forum.
Bonnie, I'm running this from my laptop, and it's hard for me to see the people who are entering. So
most of them have their cameras off.
Okay, I'm just going to admit some people, and then I'm going to go back to sharing. Welcome, everyone. All right, sharing again.
Great. All right. Okay, so then we'll go back to our slideshow. Hopefully. All right. So again, for those of you who just joined us, I'm Bonnie Marmer from the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. I'm here with my co-president, Denise Lucy. Amy Lykover, Federation of the San Rafael Neighborhoods, is here, and she is their president. We're going to introduce the candidates soon. But before we do that, we want to tell you a little bit about the missions of our two organizations, just in case you're not familiar with who we are and what we do. Before, it looks like everybody is muted, but if not, I want to make sure that you please mute yourself during this presentation. Okay, and for those of you who are having any difficulty adding your neighborhood to the to your name to let everybody know where you're from, you can use the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask for help on how to do that. The other reason to pay attention to that chat button is that's where you will be submitting your questions to the candidates. So be sure to submit your questions to them via the chat at the bottom of your screen. Next. Oops. Okay. So to tell you a little bit about the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. And we are a nonprofit organization representing the interests of residents and neighborhood associations along the Point San Pedro Road corridor in East San Rafael. The coalition's role includes advocacy and education on environmental, land use, emergency preparedness, health and safety, and other issues that directly affect this community. We've been doing candidates forums for the past 20 years, and we're glad that you could join us tonight for this event. One of our resources is our wonderful website, which you are invited to check out. Thank you, Amy, for clicking on that so people can take a peek. Under the topics in depth there, you'll see that there's information about the rock quarry, the roadway, Loch Lomond Marina, disaster preparedness, and wetlands. Under our resources, you'll find our YouTube channel, where we have recorded some of our prior meetings and webinars There's information about our local wetlands and a whole host of other issues that you may find interesting. We invite you to join our email list or come peruse the website at any time. And now Amy's going to tell you about the Federation.
Thank you. Just going to admit 2 people. 1 second, let me go back.
I will admit them.
Where? Here we go. Just a second now.
Lots of people joining us, so welcome
I
to
was
everybody.
so happy about that. The purpose of the Federation of San Rafael Neighborhoods is to facilitate communication and interaction among the neighborhoods in San Rafael as represented by their associations, groups, and individuals, and to promote effective and regular communication with government entities and agencies. And this is our website. We have a lot of information on our website, information about the neighborhoods and the homeowner associations that are part of our group. You can check out, news. You can check out tapings of our past forums, et cetera. It's very interesting. Also, go ahead and check how to become a member. We encourage you all to consider that. There's an individual, as a household, or as a group, and we have a sliding scale for group memberships. Okay. Bonnie?
All right. This format is going to be strictly adhered to, and Denise Lucy is going to be ensuring that we do that. She's our timekeeper. And so we are going to start out with the opening statements of the candidates. They will give us their background, qualifications, priorities, and goals. The focus tonight is on the issues, and we are very much interested in hearing what the candidates have to say about the issues. And the way to get to those issues is to have a very interesting Q&A. We've already seen a lot of questions come in. The answers to those questions will be limited to 1 minute per question. So that's a very tight timeline for the candidates, but I think that they can succinctly address these issues, and we'll get through lots of questions. Once we're done with the Q&A, we'll go to the closing statements of 2 minutes from each candidate. Remember, in order to submit your questions, send them to us via the chat only. Okay, next.
And as I'm changing slides, I just thought I'd mention that we will be alternating as much as we can between questions submitted via chat and questions that Bonnie has received in advance.
Thank you. So with no further ado, we'll start with the candidates. They are Sarah Amendzadeh and Damon Connolly. They will basically be introducing themselves in their 5-minute presentation to start off. And we're going to start this evening with Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Sarah, thank you for joining us, and thank you to Damon as well. Again, Denise is going to be timing this. I'm not sure, Denise.
I'll show you. There's the clock. Can you see it?
And
It's
it's
in Denise's
pretty
window.
tiny. It's in Denise's window. It's so the view is.
Can you see the clock? I'll reset it. Here we go, Sarah.
And what Denise is going to do is she's going to indicate when you have the 1 minute remaining, and you don't have to fill the whole 5 minutes.
Okay. I was going to say a 5 minute. It sounds like a long time, but let's get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Amendzadeh, and I'm running to be your next Assemblywoman. I currently serve as a public member on the California Coastal Commission and have been engaged in public service work my entire life as an environmental nonprofit advocate. For more than a decade, it was my job to go to Sacramento several days a week and to write legislation, pass legislation, and negotiate with the governor's office on issues such as clean water, wildfire preparedness, transportation, climate action, open space, sea level rise, resiliency and flooding, water conservation, and many other topics. So I've dedicated my entire life to working in this way on behalf of working families and people in Sacramento. And that's why I believe I would be qualified for this job. I've actually worked in Sacramento. I have relationships and expertise. I know what it's like to sit across from the governor's office in the late hours of session, and more pertinent to this conversation, in the early phases of the budget negotiation, which will start as soon as your next assembly person is elected for his January 10th budget. We need someone in Sacramento that can hit the ground running on day one. I have been endorsed by 43 current legislators who view me as a capable colleague and who I'm going to have a voice for our communities on resources that we need for projects in our district, on reforms that we need, and can serve as a bridge between the local community issues that all of us care about for our families and what actually can get done in Sacramento. I'm also proud to be endorsed by Mayor Kate, Eli Hill, and several other council members in San Rafael, as well as every single member of the San Rafael School Board, your congressman and mine, Congressman Jared Huffman. I have really enjoyed great support, not only from statewide leadership where I would be serving, but also from local leaders. And that state-local connection is, I think, really the focus of this job, is to take local concerns to Sacramento and effectively move the needle on issues so that we are bringing resources back to the district, so that we are making sure that laws are passed that actually reflect local needs and perspectives and move the needle on issues we care about, like sea level rise resiliency, on housing, on transportation, and on education. I am the mom to a 4-year-old, Henry, and I want to thank this group for actually moving the candidate forum. I've been campaigning for 1 year and I've never missed a single obligation, and I was really remiss to do so, but my son Henry had an ear infection when this conversation was originally planned, and thank you to Damon and the organizers for being so gracious and allowing us to reschedule. And on that note, I guess I would say that I would be the first woman in 20 years to hold this position. Our legislature is currently 70% men, meaning that women do not have equal representation at decision-making tables about our bodies, about our healthcare, and about our kids. And I think we can all agree that if we had more parents and working moms at decision-making tables, the COVID response would have been handled a lot differently. Our schools and our teachers would be funded a lot differently. And the way that we make decisions generally about public health and well-being would be different. One very specific example is around gun sense reform, which is an issue I care a great deal about. And we had a concealed weapon carry bill fail by just 1 vote. And there was a small caucus, they call themselves lovingly the Moms Caucus, that was working all night to try to get that last vote, and they couldn't get it. And so my pledge is to go to Sacramento on all of your behalf and to stand with other women and working parents in the legislature to fight for laws that make all of our lives better. I decided to run for this seat and I launched my candidacy on a platform of climate action. I have a 25-point climate action plan. My hope and intention is to start a climate caucus in the legislature. So that is really what is driving me to serve, and it would be my great honor to do so. Thank you so much.
Bonnie?
Thank you, Sarah. One little thing I neglected to mention, for those who haven't noticed, that there is a closed captioning and a live transcript for anybody that wishes to take advantage of that. So just for those of you who would benefit from that, we have that for you. And at this time, we're ready to hear from Damon. Damon, please go ahead.
Thank you. Really appreciate being here this evening. Thank you to the coalition, to Sarah, and to the audience for tuning in tonight. Even though we're running for a state level office, for me, this all comes down to community. And I'm running to be your local voice in Sacramento as a member of the state assembly. And I'm doing so with a deep commitment to our community. I've been proud to be your neighbor in Marin for 25 years. I raised my family here, including my 2 daughters who are now in their 20s. Hard to believe. I understand our community's values and I share those values. And most importantly, and I think what clearly distinguishes me in this race is I've actually been doing the work and serving the community as a local representative for the last 18 years, starting as a member of my local school board, reflecting my passion around public education and enabled me to be the first person in my family to go to college and fulfill the dream of a 12-year-old to become a lawyer. And to ensure that every child, no matter what their background or zip code, has the same opportunity to a high quality public education. I was your city council member and vice mayor in San Rafael. And most recently, for the past eight years, have been a county supervisor serving the San Rafael community. I've been working on the very issues that are now at stake at the Sacramento level. How are we going to make a huge impact on the climate crisis? Women's rights, and particularly reproductive health and abortion rights, are now under assault. I'll talk about that for a minute. Housing issues, homelessness, and truly reflecting solutions on these issues in a way that matters and makes sense for our local communities, not make sense for Sacramento politicians. And I'll respectfully distinguish from my colleague with her experience and endorsements from Sacramento. I come at it from the opposite perspective. I have the local experience and the local support and relationships to make an impact for our communities at the state level. With women's rights under assault, the Dobbs decision is personal for me, as I mentioned, as the dad of 2 daughters. I was the first candidate in this race to call for California to be a sanctuary state, to enable people from all over the United States and the world, for that matter, to come to California and get abortion services and reproductive health that they need. And we need to go beyond that. We need to pass Proposition 1. And we also need to ensure that women and girls are elevated in every sense of the word. Equal pay for equal work, job places free of discrimination and harassment, and an education system that truly elevates all. As a California Deputy Attorney General, earlier in my career, I took on Enron and the other out-of-state power companies that gouged our state. We achieved justice, returning billions of dollars back to our community. And for me, it underscored with my environmental passion what we need to do to ensure more freedom and independence for our local energy needs, namely to greatly increase renewable energy. I was one of the co-founders of Marin Clean Energy and helped launch Sonoma Clean Power. We can do much more toward those programs at the state level, and I intend to do so. We need to continue to hold PG&E accountable. We need to increase rooftop solar and not tax it. And you have my commitment to work on those issues. I've never been afraid to stand up to special interests and corporate power. I'm leading the charge as a Marin County supervisor to actually take on big oil corporations for the lies that they told to the public early on about the environmental impacts of their products. And we're now seeing the results around sea level rise and wildfire. I'm firmly committed to doing everything it takes to protect our communities from the wildfire threat. It's something I work closely on, speaking in folks' living rooms with them about their fears around evacuation routes. We need the state to be a true partner in protecting our communities.
Thank you, Damon.
All right.
Thank you very much. Now, the next part of our event is the Q&A, and we are getting questions in the chat. As we mentioned, we had a number of questions submitted in advance. I think, Amy, I kind of like to start off with that very first question in the chat. What do you think?
Yes, most definitely. With the transcript, though, I'm trying to get back to it. Do you
Oh,
have it in front-
let me just go ahead and ask that question. Let's start with Damon. Damon, what would you say is the biggest difference between you and your opponent?
I kind of touched on it in my opening. I think very highly of Sarah, but I don't think there's any comparison in the connections to the community and the level of actual work done on behalf of our communities and the perspective that we would bring to Sacramento on that basis. Sarah speaks of a climate plan, which I'll just note I haven't seen yet, but I bring a climate record as a true climate champion for our communities. I mentioned the critical role in founding Marin Clean Energy. I wrote the first climate action plan in Marin County. And another difference is you're not going to see me ever skip a vote. I will stand up and take the tough votes in Sacramento. It's all too common where we send people there and that doesn't happen. My opponent has actually missed a full third at least of key votes on the Coastal Commission. And all
Thank
too
you,
often we've
Damon.
seen
Thank you.
climate
Sarah?
votes fail.
Yes,
on
thank
those.
you. I think you can kind of see partially the difference. And I guess I'll just say this wasn't my original answer, but hearing Damon, I was inspired. The biggest difference between us is I'm a woman and a mom. Damon spoke about some missed Coastal Commission meetings, which my alternate was kind enough to represent me at. I became pregnant with my son, Henry, almost right after I got onto the Coastal Commission and was breastfeeding him. So I did need to take some family time and miss some meetings, but I'm really proud of that. And I think we need more young women and working parents in decision-making roles. I think we need to find ways to support that so that they can participate. And I think it's essential that we have women and working parents in leadership positions because they bring a compassion, and empathy and a determination for change that I think we don't always see from career politicians. And I guess I would also just sort of point to the statewide experience. This is a statewide role, and we need somebody who's qualified and ready to hit the ground running.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the questions that we received several questions about is a topic of homelessness, but it's not, let me just go on to the next one. More affordable housing and a solution for homelessness both need to be addressed. Do you believe that a single approach can address both, or are these two separate, though possibly related issues? And how would you, as our representative in the Assembly, address this on behalf of Marin? And that goes first to Sarah.
Sorry, and just to clarify the question, how are homelessness and housing related?
Yes.
Yeah, I do see them as distinct but related and requiring separate but coordinated solutions. I believe we have 3,500 unhoused folks in the district currently. Some of those folks have been perpetually unhoused and have mental health or drug or alcohol abuse issues. But some are unhoused because housing has become too expensive and they were forced to live in their cars. Housing is essential and is something that we have struggled with as a community for years. So we need to address the root causes of homelessness, only some of which focus on housing. We need to support mental health support better. We need to address drug and alcohol issues, and we need to make it possible for people who work in the district to actually live in the district with affordable housing and more housing at all levels.
Thank you. Damon?
These are both issues I work every day on. And on homelessness, we're making an impact. We've housed over 500 of our most chronically homeless over the last several years, given our Housing First strategy. Project Home Key is something we're fully bought into. The state has to be a partner on that, allowing communities to buy motels, hotels, vacant office buildings. It has to be combined with mental health. I've pushed for Laura's Law, was a leader on that. I support Care Court, and we have to implement that successfully. We need compassion toward the homeless, but we also need to be firm. I think taking back public spaces, because it doesn't make sense for people to be living under freeways or in parks. On housing, we need to use an approach that makes sense for our communities. We have an affordability need. I think we can reutilize commercial space that are underutilized better, vacant office spaces, ADUs, JDUs, smaller infill projects. We have a story to tell. What we don't need is a state imposing one size fits all mandates. I will seek immediately to amend SB 9 as your state legislator.
Thank you. Next question. What will you use your position in the assembly as a benefit for your constituents in Marin and Sonoma counties to manage sea level rise? Let's start with Damon on that.
Thank you. It's a huge issue facing both communities. And again, one I've worked extensively on with local experts, environmental groups, and community members. In fact, we implemented Baywave in Marin County, which is a way to actually map out where our coasts are most vulnerable and actually implement planning around that. The state and federal governments have to be a partner on this. We're seeing extreme examples now where there's actual flooding on primarily underserved communities such as in Marin City and along Highway 37, which is something I'm very involved in. So as we improve infrastructure, these projects are as much about the environment as transportation. So as we push multimodal transportation solutions, we also need to create resilience towards sea level rise. And ultimately, it's a matter of protecting our communities against these threats.
Thank you.
By drastically reducing reliance on fossil fuels and also
Thank
meeting
you.
natural
Okay,
infrastructure
sorry,
needs.
1 minute goes too fast. I know, and these are big questions.
Sorry, I'll totally respect that. Yep, got it.
Sarah.
Yes, I've worked on sea level rise issues for years, ever since law school. Actually, this has been a focus. Last year, I worked with the Senate leader to pass a bill to add the word sea level rise to the California Coastal Act so that we could be better empowered to address those impacts and use best available science throughout the state. I also negotiated a $30 million allocation to support local coastal planning for sea level rise. I think that's emblematic of what you want in your state leader in Sacramento. You want someone who has an eye on the need for statewide uniform policy and science, but you also want somebody who's going to fight for local communities to have the resources they need to actually implement adaptation needs and resilience needs. When it comes to sea level rise, I think we need to focus first and foremost on frontline communities like the Canal neighborhood, who are disproportionately impacted by not only sea level rise and flooding, but by other climate impacts as well. And I look forward to working on that.
Thank you. Amy, do you want to ask one of the questions from the chat?
Well, do we want to do something controversial, Damon and Sarah?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about the third lane on the westbound Richmond Bridge. Go ahead. Let's see now. Sarah starts that out. Am I right, Bonnie?
Yes.
All right. So why can't we get the third lane open?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think we need to find a solution to the traffic challenges. I use that bridge nearly every day because my in-laws live in the East Bay and I sit in that traffic. I share your concern. I think using a movable barrier is a near-term solution that we could use in the short term to address some of the pretty painful traffic issues that we're all sitting in, but also suffering the pollution from as well. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. I really appreciate this one. As your Metropolitan Transportation Commissioner, I successfully pushed for a third lane solution eastbound on the lower deck of the bridge. And as many of you know, I've been pushing for a westbound third lane to utilize the movable barrier. We are putting together a coalition of broad support. People believe that we need to create solutions for commuters, because the fact of the matter is the bike lane is really serving as a recreational asset, primarily on the weekends. So solutions we're pushing for include removing the current toll plaza, making it open road tolling, reinstituting a carpool lane, looking at transportation demand management solutions to enable folks to time their commutes. And there will actually need to be some infrastructure improvements on the Marin side to effectuate the third lane. So that's something I'm continuing to push for
Thank
on your
you.
behalf, and we'll do so at the state level.
All right, great, thank you. Next question is, what will you do to reverse the trend of businesses and individuals leaving California? Sarah?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I don't know the exact solution, but it is a trend that we're seeing. And I think people feel overtaxed in particular. This is something we talked about with the Taxpayer Association. We need to make it possible for people and affordable for people to live in California and to be able to recruit and retain a workforce. And we see it particularly in our district that that's just not manageable. And we are seeing attrition as a result. I think that there's an enormous opportunity with the current budget surplus and with investments that we can make in the coming years to make it more hospitable to both businesses and families. I know how hard it was for my family to move to the district, and I know others are in the same position. So I think about this issue for the state, but I also think about this issue for our district in particular, because it's particularly hard to be able to afford to live here and to be able to have a business and recruit a workforce. And that's something that I really look forward to working on.
Thank you. Damon?
Thank you.
So I'm proud to be the candidate in this race with a broad coalition that includes business. I have the support of the Santa Rosa Chamber of Commerce and farm bureaus in both counties, in addition to labor and environmentalists and neighborhood groups. And the reason is I come with actual experience and solutions. We got through the pandemic working with businesses, and we know there are challenging times right now. Businesses are having a tough time recruiting and retaining employees. I'm working through those issues with them. We have to keep our local communities and downtowns vibrant. We have to ensure that we have a strong education system, that we're addressing issues like transportation and housing that impact the climate of the business. And we absolutely have to keep our fiscal house in order, our budgets balanced, our pension systems intact and strong. And that's something I'm committed to. I think I'm uniquely experienced and qualified in this race and in addressing our business issues.
Thank you.
I do have another one, Bonnie.
Great, thank you. Go for it.
All right. Oh, spotlight. Here we go. All right. And this, the question is, what is your biggest challenge working with all the parties in this position to date? And here, I'm not quite sure if we're talking about the position that you're running for. I'm guessing it is. What do you think will be your biggest challenge going forward? So we'll start with Damon.
What's frustrating to me is the notion right now that in Sacramento, we have a supermajority of Democrats. There's actually over 2/3 of the legislature Yet some of the key issues facing our communities are not getting done. It blows me away that there are Democrats in the legislature taking big money from oil, from other large corporations. And for me, what it underscores is I'm not going to be about representing special interests. I'm going to be about representing the people. And that's why I'm the grassroots candidate in this race. I don't tell one group something and another group another. I'm a straight shooter. And the way I've put together a broad coalition here, as I have in the past, is people know what I'm all about and they know the results I can get for our communities. And again, I think the power base is from the local level going to Sacramento, not vice versa.
Thank you.
And very often we lead in the North Bay.
Okay. Sarah.
Yeah. So I've worked in Sacramento, as I said, for a long time. So I'm not blown away by the fact that there's a supermajority and we aren't getting a lot of things done, because I understand the way Sacramento works and I understand what needs to happen to build power around issues that we care about and really move the needle. I think the biggest obstacle is distraction. There are so many priorities for this governor and for this legislature. And the way that I plan to address that is to really focus on key priorities, which for me are to ensure a sustainable water supply, to ensure that we move the needle on climate action so that we can leave our kids a livable planet, and to address issues like mental health, housing, and homelessness. The biggest challenge is just that there's so much going on. And so it's hard to build power around a given issue, given everything that's out there. People get distracted. And so I'm going in with a very focused agenda and with a set of colleagues who really understand where I'm coming from and what my priorities are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, we're going to start with you on the next question, which is to talk about your position on gun control.
Yes, thank you for this question. As I just mentioned, this is a top priority for me. I live across the street from an elementary school. I have a 4-year-old son. I stayed up all night crying after the Uvalde shooting, and I'm proud to be a Moms Demand Gun Sense candidate. My priority will be to pass the bill that failed last year, the concealed weapon carry bill. But there are a whole other set of gun sense reforms that we need to see over the next 3 years, not only to protect Californians and to protect our schools and other public spaces, but to chart a course for other states as well. We have seen dangerous action on this and inaction at the federal level, and California must lead. I've said a few times during this campaign, I'm going to fight like a mother on gun sense reform, and I can't wait to get started.
Okay, thank you very much. Damon.
Being a strong advocate against gun violence and what we need to do in the legislature. I'm also proud to be a Moms Demand Gun Sense endorsed candidate, one of my proudest endorsements. I share Sarah's commitment to immediately addressing the concealed carry permit law. I was very distraught that that did not go through. I think we need to think outside the box too. One legislative idea I have is a lot of these perpetrators, and this was a case in the recent school shooting, have body armor. Why do civilians need that? It may make sense on a law enforcement basis, but that perpetrator was actually able to do more violence because of the fact that he had body armor on. I'd like to see perhaps more regulation around that, in addition to a heavy duty push on issues that keep California in the forefront nationally in protecting our communities from gun violence, particularly in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Amy.
How might, let me spotlight myself back and forth. 1 second. All right. How might federal infrastructure funds be used to address environmental habitat restoration projects in our district? Damon.
So I was very proud to work with Congressman Huffman in actually inserting language in the reauthorization of the Federal Water Resources Development Act, walking the halls of Congress, working with folks to actually institute language that specifically has the Army Corps of Engineers, which is responsible for infrastructure dollars, to account for sea level rise and its impacts on our local communities. As I mentioned, Highway 37. Many of these largest projects now invariably are as much about the environment as infrastructure, and the funding has to be treated accordingly. We have to use nature-based systems to combat the effects of sea level rise. We have to do habitat restoration, marsh restoration. Again, I have a track record of this in my district. In fact, I've been a leader on open space preservation and marsh restoration and similar projects, while actually taking care of our multimodal transportation needs as well. So thank you.
And Sarah?
Yes, I am excited for this question. I had the honor of serving on President Biden's Infrastructure Campaign Advisory Committee. So I actually had a hand in developing some of the federal infrastructure funds that we are now seeing come down. And I hosted a roundtable discussion with California Natural Resources Secretary Wade Crowfoot on this very topic. And the purpose of that roundtable and my perspective on this is that natural infrastructure investments should go into frontline and underserved communities first and foremost, and to areas, including parts of San Rafael, that are vulnerable to flooding associated with sea level rise. So restoring our natural areas can do a great deal to mitigate flooding and to protect us from extreme weather events. And this is something that we should be really encouraging. We need a champion in Sacramento who can go and fight for these funds and deliver them to the district so that we're able to fund all the amazing projects that are proposed across the county.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Okay, thank you. Let's start with Sarah on this one. Wildfires have become more frequent occurrences in California, for sure, and are expected to continue to cause significant impacts on air quality. Recent studies show adverse health impacts from wildfire smoke and particulates from industrial operations are of increased concerns on a wider range of medical issues. What will you do to address this increasing risk?
Yeah, thank you for this. This is actually the reason that I decided to run for this seat, is the particularly bad wildfire season when the sky was orange and the air quality index was in the 200s, even the low 300s. I found myself taking days off work and driving my son to areas with better air quality because I was so panicked about the long-term impact it would have on him. So this is exactly why I'm running for the legislature. And I would pursue two parallel paths. First, I would urgently demand climate action to ensure that our future and our planet that we're leaving our kids is not filled with the constant threat of severe and persistent wildfire. So decarbonizing is essential to ensure that. And that's the reason I'm running. We also need additional funding for wildfire prevention, preparedness, and response. And that's something that I could effectively fight for alongside Senator Mike McGuire. Thank you.
Thank you. Damon.
I'm proud that working with many of you, we passed Measure C, the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is a way to attract local funding as well as state and federal funding for our communities. As I mentioned, a big part of my job over the last several years has been to meet with folks in their living rooms, talking about evacuation routes. It's a huge issue in Marin, and up in Sonoma County, you have communities that literally have one road or highway highway, in the case of Highway 12, in and out. We need a house out approach. We need to provide individual homeowners with the resources they need to protect and harden their own homes, for neighborhoods and communities. And the state absolutely has to be a key partner in that. It's something I'm working on every day now. And you may have noticed it was the subject of my first mailer in this campaign. It's that important to me. On the broader issue, let's accelerate electric vehicle adoption. I'm pushing for
Okay,
100%
thank you.
by
1 minute.
2030.
Okay.
You
Amy.
heard it here first.
All right, 1 second. All right.
Lots of good questions in the chat. We got plenty
Yeah.
of questions here.
So would it be possible as a way to help more EV drivers to charge off peak hours to require auto dealers to pre-program the EVs they sell to charge at the preferred times? Of course, the driver could always override or change this setting, but it would save money if they left them. Let's start with Damon.
It's an interesting concept. I hadn't thought about that, and it might be one of the technology-based solutions we need to look at. I think more fundamentally, we need to ensure two things. One is that we have the charging infrastructure in place, and that includes at multifamily dwellings. A lot of folks right now do not have access to charging. We need to change that. We need to actually, frankly, make EVs more affordable by having a secondary market. And I think the other issue you're getting to is making sure we have enough of a renewable energy supply and it can be delivered to our communities. That's why I'm also really pushing ideas like community microgrids, again, to create more independence around energy usage for our local communities, and that we're not as subject to PG&E in that regard. I think we need to greatly increase renewable energy supply, and that's again where things like community choice programs are at the top of my agenda.
Great. Okay.
Sarah?
Yes. I think it's a great question, and I think it speaks to the fact that we need an all of the above approach when it comes to electric vehicles and climate action. We need consumer level solutions, we need dealer level solutions, and also for car manufacturers. And so I love that question because it articulates that we can't leave anything on the table when it comes to emissions reductions and needed savings. And I agree with Damon. The point really is that we have a reliable supply of renewable clean energy that is readily available throughout the district. And that does include residential level charging options, but also importantly, a new grid that can carry clean energy to places that didn't have it previously. So I do see electric vehicles in general, as well as the infrastructure, as a key part of the climate solution, and it features heavily in my climate action plan.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Thank you. All right. Next question, starting with Sarah. What do you see as the key mental health service issues you can address as a member of the Assembly?
Yeah, I was just waiting for the spotlight to change.
It's just,
Okay.
it's just me with my touchpad here.
You know, I think for me, it's really about destigmatizing mental health. I list mental health as one of my top 3 priorities. It's really about destigmatizing mental health and making sure that it's a part of all of our discussions, which are numerous, around single payer affordable healthcare. So just enshrining from the get-go that we consider mental health to be a part of that conversation in terms of how we're supporting individuals, how we're supporting care providers and insurance companies in delivering services that are needed. It's been missing from the conversation, and the time is now, because I do believe we're going to see some additional action on single payer affordable healthcare in the coming years. And I only have a minute, but I could talk about this for some time. We have the highest number of older adults. We have youth in our district that are struggling, and we just need better support on this topic.
Thank you. Sorry, it goes.
I-
Not
That was
more
the most,
minutes,
that was the most
unfortunately.
panicked I've been in seeing my time run out. There's so much to say.
Okay, let's go to Amy for the next question.
Damon needs to answer this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I got distracted. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just focus on two aspects. So I've been a huge proponent of mobile crisis teams. It's a way to, particularly for folks on the street in crisis, to get mental health professionals there. It's an alternative to having someone with a badge and gun have to make these calls. So it actually feeds into criminal justice reform as well. It's been successful locally. I think we can continue to take it statewide. I mentioned the care court, and I was actually the supervisor who brought Laura's Law to Marin County. I think the care court is something I would have supported. It's a matter of implementing it effectively, and that brings folks who are in crisis, are not taking medications before a judge. We have to be mindful of civil liberties. We have to make sure that we're working closely with counties, that they have the funding and resources to successfully implement the program. More broadly, we need mental health parity as we move toward universal health care and a single payer system. So I absolutely agree on that as well.
Thank
You
you.
could have the support of healthcare workers in this race.
Thank you. Bonnie, before you go on, Denise, I no longer see the clock. I don't know what happened. All right, and folks, I'm really sorry to have the ding dong of people coming and going, but I'd have to actually close the meeting to change it. So thanks for your patience, Bonnie.
Yeah, so I think the next
it-
question's from the chat.
All right, here goes. And I'm going to make this a little bit broader. The first person to speak will be Damon. I noticed that there are plans to build a large multi-unit housing facility in the canal in place of the bowling alley. And so I think we could, this is a specific issue, but we could probably assume that this would be another setting, right, where they're going to knock something down and build large multi-unit housing facilities. This person has a concern with safety, crowding, and loss of activities for youth. Damon?
Yeah, I think those are legitimate considerations. I don't know the details as well, the specific unit count and makeup of that proposal. But all too often, what we see is ostensibly in the name of affordability, you have larger developments that end up being only 10% affordable. And quite often the reason is there's actually a gap in financing. We need to solve that. This shouldn't be about just helping out big developers. It actually has to be about helping the community. So what I think is the state has to be a true partner. Rather than focusing on one size fits all or mandates, how do we help close that financing gap? How do we think creatively about repurposing underutilized commercial space or office buildings, but in doing it in a way that's protecting open space, where we're not building in high wildfire areas, that we're accounting for resource limitations. Again, I think we have a story to tell here.
We're out
I
of
think we
time.
need an advocate in Sacramento on our behalf.
Thank you, Damon. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So I've served on the California Coastal Commission for 5 years, and one of our main charges is to ensure that proposed developments preserve not only coastal access and coastal protection and open space, but also community character. So that's always the lens through which I view any proposed development. Is this locally needed? Is it desired? And does it preserve community character? So, based on the broad brushstrokes, the description there, it sounds like there might be some community character issues. I think we all recognize that we need to build additional housing. We need to make it possible for our kids and our grandkids to live here, and also the people that work in our community to be able to live here. But we have to do it in a way that preserves what's so special about Marin, about San Rafael in particular, given the focus of this call. And that's something that I'm uniquely qualified to do because that's work I've been doing for years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay, I'm realizing there's so many questions in the chat. Do you want to do another chat question?
Sure. Question for both candidates. Will help get funding to support Zone 9 flood control in support of the Friends of the Corte Madera Creek Restoration in sync with flood control? That's as far as I can interpret the question. Damon, does that make sense to you? Or Sarah, you're going to go first.
Yeah, it does make sense to me because I've actually been working with the Corte Madera, Friends of the Corte Madera Creek, to get funding for that project. I wrote a letter of support because I believe that the restoration desired there not only addresses the flooding, but also makes the area safer and more beautiful. And I believe the area that you're referring to is actually close to my home. But regardless, I think I'm very supportive of projects like that in general. If there's an opportunity to restore a natural area, we have a multi-benefit project that can address flooding, extreme weather events, make the area nicer, more aesthetically appealing. I'm all for it. And I've focused quite a bit of my career exactly on this area of infrastructure funding, infrastructure projects that can make us safer and make us have a better quality of life.
Thank you.
Damon?
Yes, also very committed to nature-based solutions and multi-benefit. I will say that project ties into a much larger issue, and that is flooding in the Ross Valley. And I've been asking, as some of you may have noticed, some tough questions around that, around planning, adequacy of money, how the money is being spent. As well as the issue of downstream impacts and the no rise rule. I think what you will know about me is I'm always going to ask the tough questions. Is our money being used wisely? Do the solutions make sense? And in this case, there's also an issue about some public space in San Anselmo as well. These are kind of the big issues that I'm very much focused on as your county supervisor. It's with that knowledge and community basis that I'll seek solutions in Sacramento on your behalf.
Thank you. Bonnie, there's a question about the SMART train, and I think while it's a little bit difficult to make this one out, it might be a good idea to, in general, ask for perhaps how the next California Assembly person from District 12 can help with the downturn of the smart usage and the businesses that have shut down, according to this writer, along the stations. And yeah, so that seems to be pretty much it. Let's talk about SMART. Damon, you want to start?
So with respect, maybe I'll push back a little bit on the questioner. I'm on the SMART board, and I know there have been questions raised, but the good news is SMART ridership is heading back up right now, and it's based on a number of solutions, including significantly cutting fares, and the fact that congestion is back, and that SMART at its best is also being used for other uses like tourism. It's actually the fact now that I think SMART ridership has come back second only to Marin Transit. Do we need to do more? Absolutely. We have to fulfill the promise to get it north. I see a lot of potential in making it go east-west. The state is very interested in that. And I think that's something we can pursue. And you know me, I'm all about bike and pedestrian opportunities as well, fulfilling that promise of the multi-use path. We continually have to watch the bottom line with SMART, including freight service.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Tough
Sarah?
issues. Okay. Speaking of tough issues, Sarah, there's a question in the chat, and there was actually another.
Could Sarah answer that as well? The SMART question.
Moving on. Sorry. Again. Yes, of course.
Do you want me to answer the SMART question?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the biggest priority, I think, is that we ensure that SMART doesn't become a stranded asset, even with ridership down, even with the challenges of COVID. And so investing in addressing some of the first mile, last mile issues so that more folks can use it, completing the multi-use pathway, and supporting shuttle services between the ferry and some of the larger employers and heavily used areas, I think would improve things.
Okay, your turn, Bonnie.
Thank you. My apologies. Yeah, so in the chat and also in a question that was sent in earlier, this is really to Sarah. The question is, why have you accepted donations from the fossil fuel industry? It was mentioned in the Marin IJ that there was a family connection. And so the question is, that was submitted previously, is when votes come up that will deeply affect you or your family, how can you guarantee you won't be conflicted? And how can you be trusted to vote for climate change measures, even if it costs you personally?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, yeah. So let me take this in a couple of spaces, and thank you for the opportunity to address this. So Damon's second mailer was filled with a bunch of lies, essentially, which Congressman Huffman dismissed as a sleazy political tactics. I would never take fossil fuel industry money. The creator of the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge endorsed me personally and took to my defense on social media. She was disgusted by the attacks. My dad is an engineer who has worked and still works in the energy industry. That is true. But I can't imagine any bearing on my votes or my activities as a lifelong environmental advocate or as a legislator. So yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address it. I think attacking family should not be on the table. And it's something that a career politician thinks nothing of. But to me, I take it really personally. This is my life's work, and it's my dad.
Thank you.
So I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Damon, do you want to respond to that?
I'll be happy to, since I was just called a liar and a sleaze. For those who saw the mailer, it's completely factual. It's just laying out kind of the differences between us. And on the fossil fuel issue, I get it that it's Sarah's dad, but a no fossil fuel pledge is a no fossil fuel pledge. There's no differentiation based on family members. And the fact is her dad, who's listed as a current CEO of Fact Corp, anyone can Google it, is into her campaign as her largest contributor. He literally wrote the book on fracking and provides fossil fuel-based consulting services to the largest oil corporations around. So I'm not trying to mislead, and that's not the only issue I raise. We talk about the over 1/3 of the key votes on the Coastal Commission that have been missed. You got to show up and vote when you're on that. And it's even to the point
Thank you, Damon.
where,
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Bonnie, I'd like to ask a question that's in chat, if I may.
Yes, go right ahead.
So this will give you a chance to actually reflect, because I'm not sure that either of your campaigns have done this. How have you polled people to determine what they feel are priorities, and what did you learn from their replies? So if you haven't, just discuss this. Damon, why don't you start us out?
so by poll, do you mean like getting out in the community and talking to people? That's how I would interpret it.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. So the way I came in first in this primary, in this race in June, and there were 4 strong Democrats running, is a very strong showing in Marin. And I was a runner-up in Sonoma County. So what I vowed to do was spend a part of every day since June in Sonoma County. And I've done that with the exception of 3 days. As you know, here in Santa Fe and in Marin and now Sonoma, the way I do things is on the ground, talking to people at their doors having events in people's living rooms. We just had one last night, and virtually several every week, coffee gatherings, and really hearing what's on people's minds. That's how I'm going to serve you. I'm not simply going to go up to Sacramento, never to be heard from again. I'm going to be community-based, local, hearing from you. And frankly, that's the best way to do the job. We have a lot of creativity and know-how here. And again, I don't think we need Sacramento-based people telling us how it's going on. I think we can go to Sacramento and make a difference together.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, so I have knocked 10,000 doors in this campaign, and I'm also doing events in every corner of the district through our Sarah in Your Corner program. The issues people care about are wildfire, water, climate action, mental health, housing, and transportation. And part of the way that I believe that I could be an effective representative for this area is because of Congressman Huffman's service as an assembly person and then congressman. So I know that this district wants and deserves excellent environmental representation, leadership, and expertise. And that's what I believe I'm offering in my candidacy. And we've received enormous support for that. So that's sort of an informal way of polling, meeting voters at their doors, but that's how we've been going at it during our campaign. And that's what we believe matters most to people. And yes, I'll leave it at that with the ding.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Right. This is for Sarah. The California state housing mandate is requiring over 14,000 housing units to be created in Marin in the next 8 years. In light of our current water situation, traffic congestion, and wildfire risks, do you think this level of development is warranted? And if not, is there anything that can be done to reduce it at this point? What's your position on this?
It's essential that in looking at additional housing development, we address all the issues you just mentioned. We cannot develop in wildfire prone areas or in sea level rise prone areas, which is something I've spent a great deal of time on. We must have enough water supplies for our current housing and community before we build additionally. We have to deal with our traffic issues. We already have significant congestion in key arteries to the 101. So I have a detailed drought mitigation plan to address the water supply piece of it around scaling wastewater recycling, ensuring more stormwater capture, deepening conservation and efficiency measures. And I'm laser focused on ensuring that we develop safely. These are the mandates that are coming down, and we have to work together to find a way to implement them in a way that is safe, that is locally tailored, and that meets our local needs. But it feels burdensome and it feels untenable, I know, in many, many areas. This is one of the top questions and comments that I get in our group conversations. Thank you.
Damon?
Damon, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm focused on like a laser beam on this issue because I'm living it with you. We actually are having to implement countywide housing element right now as our local cities and towns are. The RHNA numbers are too high. They don't have any rational bearing toward what, in many cases, our communities can handle. So I think we need a local voice to push back on those. That's why I'm committed as one of my first acts to seek to amend SB 9 as one example of that. Yes, Sarah's right. We do need to enhance water resources. I share many of her views around recycling, water catchment, and improving our ability to meet our supply needs. I think what differentiates us, though, is many of the Sacramento politicians that Sarah mentioned supporting her are the authors of these mandates. And I just don't think they make sense when you get down to the community level. We need housing affordability. We've talked about many of the approaches tonight. I'm fully committed to it. But we don't need is someone Sacramento-based who's going to just go along with the current approach, which is not working for our communities.
Amy, you want to take one from the chat?
Sure, I might need some help on this. This just goes to Damon, but of course, both candidates should answer. Damon, what did the county board approve with Bridge Housing concerning 110 Nova Albion and 900 Las Gallinas? Were they questioned about their plans and the current and future parking situation? Did they provide solutions, or was this rubber stamp without further county oversight? So this sounds like a particular project, Damon. Is this something that?
No, and thank you, because this is actually one of the solutions that has a lot of potential. So what we did in working effectively through a public-private partnership and providing county funding toward it is purchasing 2 existing apartment buildings in Terra Linda in my district. And it goes to our strategy of acquisition and preservation. When we talk about alternatives to simply building new development, we're talking about opportunities like this, where there's some existing affordability. It's called natural affordable housing with rents at a certain level, and locking those in so that they stay affordable going on into the future. I think we can combine this with programs I'm implementing, like landlord partnerships, where we're encouraging landlords to rent to folks, including those holding housing choice vouchers. So it's that kind of creativity, I think, around meeting affordability, where we can get beyond simply building as the only solution.
Sarah?
Yes, I don't have a detailed response on that question. Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. Bonnie, do you have a question?
Well, there are more, but we are running out of time here, I think. I want to make sure that there's time for the closing remarks, and I would suggest that if there's another one in the chat that we need to get to, that we do that. So I have a couple more here, but I think that
I did want to just acknowledge that there was a comment, and I know that running for political office is a competitive endeavor, and I think we want to just pause and acknowledge that one of our viewers is very grateful for how, in spite of the conflict, in spite of your different approaches, that we are doing our best to conduct this in a civilized manner, and that our viewers appreciate that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, Bonnie, before you move on to the closing statements.
great, thank you. Do you think, I know that Sarah has some family obligations there and it's getting difficult. So I do have 1 or 2 more questions, timing wise. Should we just go on to the
what we'll
closing?
do, since I believe Sarah started with the opening statement, is that we'll start with Damon for the closing statement. Does that seem to make sense, Bonnie?
Sure, and we can.
Happy to do so.
Okay, I think we should probably do that now. We could probably go on with lots more questions, but time is running short. So Damon, 2 minutes.
Just note, it sounds like, and not against my time, but a viewer is saying I didn't answer the question on Bridge. I can for sure, if there's more specifics around that, would be happy to do so.
Right, and
So with that,
before you start, for people whose questions were not answered, perhaps those who are with the campaigns of Sarah and Damon, could you put contact email or phone number or something like that in chat, and they can follow up with you personally. And Damon, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement, and if you could show the clock, please, Denise. Thank you, Damon.
thank you so much, Amy and Bonnie, for moderating. Thank you again to the coalition, and for Sarah for participating in this great conversation as well. I enjoyed it. I think we covered a lot of the main issues affecting our communities and those that need to be addressed in Sacramento. As I've demonstrated tonight, I'm a fighter on behalf of our communities with strong local connections and a local proven track record in getting things done, bringing people together, standing up to corporate interests, and having the conversations needed to bring our communities together and move these issues forward. Together, we partnered on issues like climate change, the challenge of our time, transportation solutions, wildfire and drought, housing affordability, homelessness, and equity. We need affordable childcare, affordable college tuition, and criminal justice reform, all issues that I work on every day. These are the issues that we need to tackle in Sacramento. I'm proud of the coalition we're bringing together in this campaign, and it reflects what I've been able to do in the past. Sonoma County Conservation Action, environmental individuals and organizations. Labor is a strong supporter, including teachers, healthcare workers, firefighters. I've got the business community, local neighborhoods, 4 of the 5 county supervisors in both Sonoma and Marin, and I have the endorsements of the Marin Independent Journal and the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. The farm bureaus of both communities, recognizing that ag is a big part of our culture and it can be a huge part of the solutions for our local economy and climate change going forward. I respectfully
Damon.
ask you to consider to come on board with my campaign. We've got 3 weeks left. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you, everyone. I ask again for your support for this assembly seat. It would be my great honor to become the first woman in 20 years to represent our area in the state legislature in Sacramento. And I think you can see from the discussion tonight that I'm running a positive issues-focused campaign. I'm not running against someone, I'm running for something. I'm running for climate action. I'm running for gun sense reforms. I'm running for water supplies and a secure water future. I'm running for wildfire preparedness, transportation improvements, housing and homelessness reforms. These are issues that we desperately need effective representation in Sacramento on, and we deserve that. We deserve somebody who has worked in the building, who knows how things work, who has connections. I have been endorsed by more than 1/3 of the legislature. These are relationships that I can use to deliver for this community, to deliver the resources that we need on sea level rise resiliency, on wastewater recycling and water conservation, and on behalf of working families. My campaign has clearly resonated with voters and supporters across the district. I'm honored to have the support of our Congressman Jared Huffman, of countless local leaders, the entire Sausalito City Council, and 4 out of 5 of the San Rafael City Council members have endorsed my campaign and my vision. We need diverse representation in Sacramento. We need effective representation in Sacramento. I have been endorsed by the California Nurses Association, by Planned Parenthood Action, and NARAL Pro-Choice for my leadership and vision to address abortion rights and civil rights issues. I have been called the best environmental leader in a decade by California environmental voters. I ask you to send me to Sacramento to get it done for our families. Thank you.
Wow. This has been a terrific, terrific discussion. I am so thankful to the candidates and to everyone for their very thoughtful questions and for being here and part of this tonight. Amy Lykover, thank you for being my partner in this. Denise Lucy, thank you for being the timekeeper, and to the candidates, great job that you've both done. As one commenter just said, it will be a tough choice, and aren't we glad that we have a tough choice to make? Thank you, everyone. And let your friends and neighbors know that this has been recorded and it will be posted on our respective websites so that if they miss this event, they can tune in later. Thanks and good evening.
And don't forget to vote.
Absolutely.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.